What's going on, y'all? This video was not planned at all. I did not plan on doing this video, but I was just kind of driving and figured, what the hell, why not? I am a very, random person sometimes, and sometimes I'm very unpredictable, and I would like to think in a good way mostly. So anyway, I'm just on the highway driving home. Had to make a stop, and I just wanted to talk about. Let me make sure I'm recording. Okay, yeah, I'm recording. Okay. I just wanted to make a video about something that I don't really talk about directly, because it's a topic that's still seen as kind of taboo by a lot of people, or it's also just seen as bad. It's kind of put into a category of bad, don't do it, or it's wrong, or whatever you want to call it. And the topic that I want to talk about is psychedelics, right? Just for disclaimer, for YouTube, disclaimer, I'm not condoning the use of, any illegal substances or anything harmful, or the use of anything that's illegal, or encouraging it in any way. This video was just for just to discuss the topic for more like research purposes, and just kind of like philosophy, I guess you could say. So this channel is not condoning the use of any recreational or illegal substances, just for that disclaimer on YouTube. So there, I'll put that out there. Alright, so like I was saying, I wanted to talk about the topic of psychedelics. And psychedelics is one of those things where it still has a generally like a negative perception by a lot of people, because a lot of things have a lot of bad things or experiences have came about through, I would say, irresponsible use of psychedelics. And I think when you have experiences that where you have people that use them in an irresponsible way, meaning you take something and then drive down the road and you're not sure how your body is going to affect to it, and then when it hits you, you're on the road, and basically reality starts to unravel in front of you. Well, what do you expect? Or you didn't do your research on the effects of it, and you take something, you didn't prepare your mind, you didn't, a lot of these things, you kind of have to, first of all, you have to know what you're getting into. You have to know what can and what may happen when you ingest certain things. So you have to mentally prepare yourself for what you may psychologically go through after ingesting certain things. So, you have to basically mentally prepare, That's a general rule of any type of psychedelic, or, really anything. And I've even found that some cannabis strains are actually mildly psychedelic. So even with certain strains of cannabis, you might want to have a bit of attention of, even though like cannabis is more like a cerebral or mental, psychedelic effect, in my opinion. I have found that some strains of cannabis can actually be euphoric to the point of, I would consider having a light to mild psychedelic experience. But nevertheless, so like I was saying, a lot of people get into these things and they do it in a very careless, uninformed manner, and then this is where you get a lot of these, crazy negative stories and experiences where you get news reports of, all this crazy stuff. And it does happen. It very well does happen, and it can happen. It's not too far-fetched to say that some really, really horrible things can happen on, a psychedelic substance, because it very well can. When you go into these situations uninformed and unprepared mentally for what these substances can, I'll say, unravel to you. You don't want to be ignorant about it. And I think that far too many people, when they get into, or they begin to experiment or explore with psychedelics, they do it in a very naive way. And I'm not gonna lie, I did too, y'all. But I was aware, but I definitely wasn't naive, because I had researched it, but I did not understand the power that a lot of these so-called psychedelics. I didn't truly understand how powerful they are. I didn't understand the power of them. I've heard stories, but the stories don't do any justice to just what can happen and what you can experience, depending on how much of a dose you take on, a certain psychedelic substance. This is why, and one day, like, I really want to move to a legal state, or have a way to, legally offer some of these things to people in a legal way, but in a responsible, informed, safe way. Because I think that a lot of these substances are, extremely powerful and beautiful. It can give you a very, very powerful and beautiful experience that can liberate your consciousness in many ways, and really expand your consciousness in many ways, and potentially, if integrated in a holistic way, can, in my opinion, how can I say, I'll say expand the potential of the average human being. And it's not that you necessarily have to take these things to do it, but yes, in a way, you can look at it as a shortcut. Now a lot of people that have done psychedelics, they say that you don't want to rely on this, and you don't want to use these substances as a crutch. And I get that. I understand that perspective. Because ultimately, you're really using something that was kind of naturally manifested in this realm or dimension, basically as a key to unlock a part of yourself. I'll put it that way. But ultimately, you can do a lot of these things without psychedelics, but I have found that it takes a lot longer, and it can be a lot more difficult and time consuming, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's not as good. But I have found that psychedelics can be almost instant enlightenment, opposed to, if you're in like some Asian country somewhere, and you have to kind of meditate for like a whole day somewhere in complete darkness or something like that. You can also recreate these experiences, but they tend to take a lot longer to get your brain into that, I guess you can say brainwave state, for you to reach these states of consciousness. So I do believe that it's important to be able to understand that, you can also do these things without psychedelics. But I will never take away the power of, just what psychedelics can do, and just how psychedelics are extremely powerful. I'm gonna repeat that. Psychedelics are extremely powerful, depending on the quality and, the amount you take and what kind you take. Psychedelics are extremely, extremely powerful tools for expanding your awareness and your consciousness. And oh my God, like, words cannot even express the magnitude of what psychedelics have revealed to me about the nature of reality. Literally, one of the first things that I said when I had a psychedelic experience was because basically, like, space and time, basically, I'm not even making this up, like, it basically folded in on itself. And one of the first things I said when I experienced this was, what is reality? Because I did not know how to explain, like, how to even comprehend what had just happened, what I had just witnessed. And I didn't even know, like, see, reality becomes so crazy when you get into these states, because you're shown that what you think is real, or what you thought you knew was real, like, you have no idea of what real even means at a certain point. We all have a certain way of defining reality as, real or not real, dream, not a dream, a thought, not a thought, being awake, being asleep, you know, when you're in a certain psychedelic state, basically your mind and your thought and your outside reality basically become overlapped. And, literally the thought realm and what you thought was the physical world, they basically begin to overlay or overlap themselves, meaning that, you know, your mental world and your physical world, basically you realize that they're all the same thing. Like, you're shown that it's the same thing. Your mind, what's in your mind, it manifests almost mentally in your what you would perceive as your external reality, and you see that. You're not told that, but you literally see it because you experience it. So, yeah. So, um, again, one of the reasons why psychedelics get such a bad, or have gotten such a bad reputation, is because a lot of people have used them irresponsibly, and they have, or in an uninformed way. They took something, they did not expect how powerful it was going to be, and when these substances started to, you know, um, peel away their perception of reality, they freaked out. They didn't stay calm. They didn't stay centered. They didn't stay balanced. And they may have seen their environment, warp, warp or change. They may have seen people around them change into, things that they subconsciously thought about them in their mind that could have began to manifest. That could have began to manifest, because in these states, what you subconsciously think about somebody, they can literally become that. Like, if you think like a woman is like a evil demon, demonic bitch, like, when you're on that woman that you might be dating, or you might be your friend or something, she might turn into a demonic creature with a knife trying to stab you or kill you, because in the back of your mind, you're like, man, this bitch is evil. You know what I'm saying? Subconsciously, this shit can happen. Your mind has that power to do that. This is the kind of shit that can happen. And the more energy that is behind that thought, that subconscious thought, the more intense these manifestations, or thought forms of manifestations, can be. And, if you think this bitch is really evil, she might look like she's trying to kill you in that state. And you might think you have to, like, defend yourself or something. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these are the kind of things that, can happen on higher doses of these, you know what I'm saying? So when you're in these states, you have to have the conscious and awareness of, okay, I might see some weird shit, but at the end of the day, you have that higher understanding that my mind is projecting a lot of this to me, and I'm not in no harm. I don't care what I see. Like, I am the center point. I am ultimately the alpha and the omega, and none of these manifestations or thought forms can truly hurt me. They can try to intimidate me. They can try to, make me think they're gonna hurt me or harm me. And yes, you could potentially see some really dark, scary shit. But you have that higher understanding that, like, listen, I don't care what I see, like, you're not gonna scare me. You know, it might be a shadow being, it might be, like I said, it might be some kind of demon looking thing. But even when I was in these states, I seen weird shit. I looked at it, I'm just like, okay, I know what you really are. I know you're just my mind projecting this thing to me. So yeah, there's a certain level of nervousness, but if you have that higher understanding, like, I know what this is, I know this is really all me. No matter what you see, it's like you can't harm me, like, and then you kind of get kind of cocky with it, like, I'm that dude, like, I'm creating all of this technically, you know what I'm saying? But your mind will still, at the same time, show you things that you're not consciously wanting to see. So again, this is when you hear a lot of these stories of, you know, um, bad trips, bad trips and stuff like that, because, you know, you can kind of try to psych yourself out, but then there's still things that, subconsciously that you kind of try to, deny or suppress, that will still force their way through um, your perception. The stronger the effects start to take place. So, and this is why a lot of people say that psychedelics can be used as a therapy, because basically everything that you're trying to accomplish in a actual therapy session, like your mind, your consciousness is doing it for you. If you take enough, it will show you, like, this is what's really going on inside of you, with symbols, with symbology, with memories, a mix of memories, or this memory is why you do this thing, or your mind in the universe has a way to create, to communicate to you, what it is that's going on through symbols and through, memories or archives, or some might call them, um, what they call them, it's a certain thing, something archive or something like that. I forget what they call them. It's a certain memory data bank of everything that's ever happened to you in your life or existence. They call it the archaic records or some shit like that. But basically, everything that's stored in your DNA and your consciousness is basically stored by the universe in a certain, non-physical place in the universe. But it's all connected to you and everybody else as their own, DNA, archaic records or whatever. And it exists. So everything that happened, the universe can tap into it and show you why you are this way, or show you, like, you do this thing in this situation and it makes this happen, or, maybe like some type of traumatic experience that happened, or it could be anything, but it affects you in a very intense way. And the universe can play these memories or these, telepathic um, events or understandings back to you and show you symbolically or literally, things that affect you, that affect your being, your state of awareness or consciousness. It'll show you, you know. So this is why psychedelics can be basically used as a therapeutic tool, because when you see face to face things that you weren't aware of consciously, and you see that you're doing certain things, or that certain things you didn't know you were doing, you're seeing it, and your mind somehow kind of just puts it together. Usually, it puts it together, and you somehow understand what was being communicated to you, symbolically or telepathically. It's like this weight of that. It's like that, just by seeing that thing, that thing is, in a way, a lot of times it's lifted off of you because you understand so much about things you weren't even necessarily conscious of. And or you can become conscious of it and try to do something about it. You know what I'm saying? You can shed awareness on things weren't aware of, or why you weren't aware, or weren't aware why you were doing it. That makes sense. So this is another reason why psychedelics, in my opinion, can be very, very beneficial. And one application of that is therapy. Now there is a dark side to psychedelics, definitely. People that don't use them in a holistic way can become I would say unbalanced in their use of them. That does happen. And I do think that in a way, in a sense, psychedelics, anything can become addictive. Let's I'm gonna say that this is my honest opinion. Psychedelics can become addictive, not in the classic sense of addiction, but they're like psychedelics. They're very liberating and they're very freeing. They a lot of times free you from the bounds of reality. They shatter your perception of reality, and they basically make it so you don't necessarily land and have you never really, if you don't take them in a balanced way, you never really get a foothold back onto a particular space and time, right? um and to live a life or a lifetime, you have to have a timeline to experience a lifetime. So if you never really get completely integrated into a timeline or a particular space and timeline, then you can become um from the from the standpoint of this physical reality, you can become a very unhealthy person from the vantage point of this physical reality and the people or the reflections in this physical reality. Because ultimately, like, I'm going to be honest, like, the true ultimate nature of reality is there really is no ultimate, in my opinion, foundation of reality. What I mean is there is no actual one truth that says this is actually how it really is. Like, reality is a thing that there really is no true up or down. There really is no true beginning or starting point. So, in my opinion, the true nature of reality is, there is no ultimate foundation for anything. This is my opinion, at least right now, except for just pure being and awareness. But everything else outside of that is just a particular belief or lens of perception or way of seeing things or belief system. So with that being said, you can go into one reality and think in one way, but that reality can have completely different laws and rules of doing things or seeing things that you may, that your perception of no foundation could, interfere with that particular reality or that particular timeline. So, if you go into psychedelics in a unbalanced way and just think that you can operate in a particular space and time or reality or physical reality with this, perception of, a foundationless existence in a particular space and time that has, you can say, that has the illusion of a foundation of belief systems and societal norms and societal expectations, it can become a slippery slope. In other words, if you go out in to public and you're on something, you can get arrested. If you have kids, like DSS, maybe like, oh, you're a danger to your kids, and you might, what I'm saying, like all kind of stuff. That's the kind of things you run into when, if you use in an unbalanced unsafe way, because of what these substances can, what they can do. They completely shatter your perception of reality. And so it can become a dark thing. And some people can become unbalanced with them. And some people can become addicted to the liberation of this physical reality and dimension that they definitely do provide. Because again, um, reality is definitely perception. How you perceive reality is definitely how it unfolds and how you experience it. And so um, based on what you believe and what you see, in reality is basically how it is for you. So kind of losing my thought a little bit, but basically, yeah, psychedelics can definitely be, in my opinion, addictive in that way because it feels good to feel liberated. It feels good to feel free from this dimension. It feels good to feel like all of your problems that you face in your life don't really matter because you realize that none of them are ultimately real. And most of the things in this reality are just really irrelevant in the universal, multiversal scheme of things. And you realize how insignificant everything really is from the perspective of, the universal mind. And when you have that perspective, a lot of times you're just like, man, don't none of this shit matter. And ultimately, it really doesn't outside of the context of this timeline, outside of the context of this particular space and time. Ultimately, I do agree with that. Everything really is kind of pointless and irrelevant. But from within it, it's like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, you have a job, you have kids, you got bills, what I'm saying? So it's this, constant, you know, um, play and duality of, you know, um, um, consciousness and being in a physical reality while still being aware of the illusion of Maya and the illusion of um, this whole thing. So yeah, again, I definitely am an advocate of psychedelics. I'm just someone that is I believe that it should be um responsible. Like, don't be an idiot, y'all. You know what I'm saying? And I've made a few mistakes too, y'all. Like, somewhat I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm aware of a lot of the power of psychedelics now. So, you know, um I'm a little bit more um less cautious, but the biggest thing is for me is please respect these substances, y'all. They're very, very powerful, and a lot of good can come from them. But please respect anything dealing with psychedelics, and because a lot of these things, if used improperly, can also have a negative effect. And they can cause people that aren't prepared for their power to do very, very dangerous things. You've heard stories of people, jumping out of windows, harming people, harming themselves, all kind of stuff. And this stuff is very possible. I'm very well aware that these things can definitely happen when you take these things and you're not prepared, or you're in the wrong setting, or you didn't prepare your mental state to, to be in this state of consciousness. You know, please, if you do this, please just prepare yourself, because if you take enough of a psychedelic and you're not ready for it, or it's your first time, and you basically start to have ego death, which is what I had. Basically, I had a complete ego death trip. And it was before it was good, it was terrifying because I didn't prepare correctly. I was naive. I was at home, but I did it in a very irresponsible way. I took way too much my first time, and my friend literally warned me. She was like, "Yo, just take a little bit, and say the rest." I was like, whatever, and I'll never make that mistake again. Now I have a general idea, a better understanding of how certain doses affect you and how long it takes for your body to actually ingest it and process it for it to actually start to for you to actually feel the effects, because a lot of these certain substances, they take a long time for you to begin to feel the effects. And so what happens with most people is they don't feel the effects in an hour or so, and so they take more and more and more, so they end up getting like 3 or 4 doses before it's all said and done. And when that first dose hits them, they see how strong it is, but by then they've already taken like 3 or 4 doses of that same thing, not realizing that you didn't even get the effects of it yet. And then when the effects finally start to hit, you're getting like 4 doses of an extremely potent psychedelic, because you made a mistake that a lot of beginners make of thinking that, oh, it's just shitty weed, or it's just shitty, it's just bunk, it's bad quality, it's not strong enough. No, it's very strong. Your body just has not, you haven't began to ingest it or process it yet to where you actually are feeling the effects. But by the time you actually ingest it, you've already ingested like 3 or 4 doses of a very, very powerful, psychedelic. But by then it's too late. So now all you can do now is just ride it out. And that's the mistake. That's the mistake that I made. That's the mistake that I made. And so unfortunately, it started out horrifically, but I was able to basically remember that ultimately I was at the center of this experience, and that my consciousness was all that truly mattered. And because I'm a person that, somewhat practices meditation, I went back to that as like my last resort, or my resort rather. And I was able to calm my mind, calm my spirit, calm my body, and regain some type of control over my mental state at that time. Because I remember like, and I wasn't even scared at what I was seeing. I was scared at how intense it was. It was a very, very intense experience because I had a lot of it, and it was my first time. I think she's fine. Anyway, but yeah, so, sorry, I was thinking out loud, y'all. This fine ass girl just walked out the store. Anyway, I might see it show on camera. But anyway, yeah, fuck it, I don't care. Y'all can judge me. Judge me, don't judge me. But yeah, it was very, very intense. And I mean, I was seeing like snakes. I saw like a bunch of like snakes on basically like, this is how the trip started to peak. I saw a bunch of snakes. My floor literally turned into a floor of snakes. This is why it's really important before you do these things to understand that your mind is going to show you certain things, that you're going to see you might see some really weird shit. My floor turned into a sea of snakes, like endless snakes. My walls, it was snakes everywhere. My walls turned into like a bunch of snakes. And then my apartment complex turned into like a translucent jungle. I was in the jungle. I had vines appearing out of nowhere in my apartment. Real shit. This wasn't even a peak. This is when it started, right? Yeah, I was seeing like geometric shapes and shit. Like I had a Shiva tapestry over my TV. There was a snake around Shiva's neck. The snake around Shiva's neck, like it like basically became alive, and like it started like coming off his neck. And I literally like remember seeing like the snake on the tapestry like was like moving, and like the little tongue was flickering. And believe it or not, when I was seeing all this shit, like I was like, oh, that's interesting, that's cool. It wasn't freaking me out. I wasn't scared. I was like, okay, cool. This is cool. I didn't get scared until like that really, really intense, like energetic feeling started to happen, because I started to feel like something was wrong or something was happening, with my heart or something. And it just kept on like building and building and building. And I thought I was having a heart attack, and that's what I thought. But I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what happened that night, but that's why, I thought like something bad had happened. But I remember dying at some point, but then like I was in like some other realm or dimension. and I was, lifting up off the ground, and I looked down and saw like the earth. I mean, it was so much. Anyway, that's a different video. But like, I remember dying that night. I remember breaking through this dimension. I remember like breaking through the physical dimension. I remember a lot, but not. I remember a lot, but like not all of it though. But anyway, that's why it's really important to prepare yourself mentally, because when weird, crazy shit does happen and you see crazy shit, subconsciously you already know, okay, this is okay, I'm fine. I prepared for this and I'm fine, So, like I said though, when you take a lot of it and you ingest a lot of it, and you start to get basically like the waves of like the extra dosage you took, that's when things can kind of, spiral into like a kind of scary situation, because your body is reacting and all you can do is basically ride out until like you hit the peak, and then you kind of like kind of come back down. But I was high for like, I won't say high, I was under the influence of that substance. I took so much for like a whole entire day, a whole day, not half day, a whole like I y'all. I took this stuff the night before, the night before. So like the rest of that whole evening, once it started, I had the trip that night. It may have been like 8 or 9 p.m. that night. That whole night, that whole night, the early morning, the entire next day, into like the evening of like the next day. When I went to sleep the next day, I was still tripping, right? I didn't really fully come off of the effects of it until the very next morning after the next day. This is how much I had. Now you understand why it's important to understand how much you're taking and how strong these things can be. I was gone. I was gone. I don't even know what happened. But anyway, it ended up being an extremely beautiful experience in the end, after it was terrifying. So anyway, I'm gonna end this video here. I just wanted to talk about this because I find it very, very um interesting, and I want to talk about it more actually. But until next time, y'all, later.